Good morning, everyone. This is Carly Wiltsey at ICA, and we are going to be talking about the 2020 census today. Just a few things before we get started. This webinar will be recorded, so we will send this out or have it uploaded to our YouTube channel so that everyone's able to view it at a later date. And then everyone is muted as of now, but if you would like to be unmuted during the presentation to make a comment or ask a question, just go ahead and type in the chat box and then I can go ahead and unmute you. And then if you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can also type in your question to the chat box, and I'll try to do my best looking at the chat box through the presentation so I can answer questions when they are when they're asked. And like I said, I'm Carly Wiltsey. I am the Community Development Training Specialist at ICA, and I'm also leading the Census grant efforts. So we will, today we're gonna talk about the 2020 census, talk about what the census is, why we do the census, why it's important. And then towards the end of the presentation, we're going to dive a little deeper into the census grant in Illinois and kind of talk about what ICA's role is and then what our subrecipients' roles are and discuss that a little bit. Okay, well, I just realized I was talking and I was muted. So I will, I will start that over again. Good morning, everyone. My name is Carly Wiltsey, and I am the Community Development Training Specialist at ICA and also the 2020 Census Grant Project Coordinator. And we are going to be talking about the 2020 census today. So we will record this webinar and send it out. If we don't send it out, oh, okay, Christine's saying she heard me. Okay. On my end, it was telling me I was muted. Oh dear, we're off to a rough start. Christine, you heard me talk about the first slide? Okay, she says she did hear me, so I would assume everyone else heard me. Okay, well then we will move on to the next slide. So today we're going to talk about who, what, when, where, why, how as it pertains to the 2020 census. We're also going to talk about the importance of census data. We're also going to talk about what you can do within the Community Action Network. And then we're going to talk about the census grant in Illinois. So first we're going to discuss what is the census. So this is a process that we do every 10 years in America. So we've been doing the census since 1790. So every 10 years since 1790, we have been counting everyone living in America. So this is mandated by the Constitution. And as you can see on this slide, it's very early on in the Constitution, and it states that we count the whole number of persons living in America. So we count all people in America, that's regardless of age or regardless of citizenship status. And so this, when looking at who we count, this includes people that have, let's say, possibly a green card. This can include your cousin from England that is living with you temporarily, let's say they're living with you for 6 months, and they are living with you as of April 1st, which is Census Day, then they are counted. And we even count people that are undocumented living in America on April 1st. And one thing to keep in mind is we do not count someone that is from America, but living in a different country as of April 1st. So if you're from America, but you're living in England right now, and that's where you live, then you would not be counted in America. So then looking at what the census asks. So what is on the census questionnaire? So it asks your age, your date of birth, your Hispanic origin, your race, and then it's going to ask how each person on the census form is related to person number 1. It's also going to ask your gender, so male or female. And there's been a lot of discussion around this in 2020. We're really hoping that in 2030 there will be a non-binary or a transgender option. But for now, for 2020, we simply, have to pick the best answer between male or female. This is definitely not the best that we can do, but it's, it's where we are at now. And then moving on to the next question, it's going to ask, do you own or rent your home? And then it's also going to ask you a few operational questions. But this is all that is on the survey. So in the past, there has been a long survey and a short survey. But in 2005, the Bureau replaced the long survey with the American Community Survey. And in the American Community Survey, that is Americans, or 1% of Americans get this every year. And so the American Community Survey, it asks much more invasive questions, but none of those questions are on the 2020 census questionnaire. So what the census won't ask for. So this is very important because a lot of people have a lot of fear of giving the government this information. So if someone's asking for a bank or your bank or credit card info, this is a scam, and do not respond. But they're not going to ask for your social security number. They're not going to ask for your citizenship status. They're not going to ask for anything political. They're not going to ask for donations or money of any kind, and they're not going to ask for your income. So responding to the census, there are 3 different ways to respond this decennial. So the online option is new this year. So this 2020 census, the online option, this is the first time you've been able to respond online. And then there's also an option to respond by phone or by mail. And this completing the questionnaire, it really doesn't take much time. I know when I completed it, I think I looked at the time and it maybe took me, I think 6 minutes to complete it. So, and I only had, one person to count, but, if you were counting a household of 5 or 6, it might take a little bit more time, but I would say it took me around the 5-minute mark. So when you're counting your household, who do you count? So you want to count everyone who's currently living in your home as of April 1st, 2020. So you're not going to count your animals, but everyone else that's living in your home on April 1st. So, this could be grandparents who are living with you temporarily. This could be nieces and nephews. This could be foster children. This could even be one of your children's friends that is living with you, temporarily. And then we even want to count newborn babies, even those born on April 1st, 2020, or those that are still in the hospital on this date. They would still be counted in your household if that's where they're coming home to. So then once we have this questionnaire filled out, then, what's the data used for? What does the Bureau do with the data? So the main two functions of the census is to apportion congressional representation and to distribute federal funding. So, and we in community action care about both of these things. So, the counts that we do, the census count, the census data is used in formulas for federal funding. So if we have a complete count, we get the funding we deserve for the programs that we work with. And then the federal dollars also fund highway transportation programs, education dollars, and more. And then if we think about the community needs assessment that community action agencies do, this census data is used in those community needs assessments. So if we don't have an accurate count when we do the needs assessment, we don't have an accurate picture of our service area, right? So we might make decisions that aren't truly backed by what the data tells us. And then in government planning, if we're looking at government planning, census data is going to be used to make decisions on the federal level. So maybe where they're going to put an army base, or where do they put a federal building. And then census data is also going to inform local decisions in your own communities. So as we all know, census impacts community action. So census data determines funding for essential federal programs. Census data informs our agency's planning or operations. And communities lose fair share of resources and representation when our communities are undercounted. And populations that are served by community action agencies are historically hard to count. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here within the next few slides about the different hard to count populations and how those populations are who we are serving in the community action network. So we can use that trusted messenger as a way to communicate with them and educate our customers about the 2020 census. So when looking at counting the population, and just some key dates here, and I will say these dates have changed quite a bit. So right now we're in the middle of the census. Early this month was Census Day. April 1st, 2020 was Census Day. At this point, everyone in America has received at least an invitation or a follow-up postcard. The pandemic, COVID-19, is definitely changing the way that we do our census this year. But there, we're trying to do our best to get everyone counted. And we're going to talk about some different ways for education and outreach to those hard to count populations here in a little bit, when we can't go door to door and we can't have events right now in person, and we can't have questionnaire locations set up. So with the questionnaire itself, like we said earlier, you can respond online, you can respond by phone, and can respond by the paper form that's sent to your household. So the invitation to respond online should have been sent mid-March. And then they were supposed to start knocking on doors the second week of May to any house that has not responded yet. But the Census Bureau has halted all in-person operations, so they will not do that enumeration until at least May 28th. And this most likely will change again, but that's the date that they're saying now. And then the deadline, the original deadline to complete the census was July 31st, but now the Census Bureau has extended it to August 14th because of the pandemic. And I know that there has been some discussion just this last week of extending it through October as well. And then just to touch a little bit on the importance of April 1st. So this is the date that you use on your census form when you complete it. So you're going to count how many individuals lived in your house on April 1st. So this is how we take a snapshot of America. You know, we have to have a single day for census, or people would get missed, or people would get double counted. So that's, you know, that's why that Census Day is just one day. So that April 1st, 2020, that's the date that you're going to use on your questionnaire. That's the date where you're going to count everyone living in your house as of April 1st. And then one note I do want to make is, so for college students during this pandemic, if you have a college student who lives off campus, so they don't live in the dorms, maybe they live in an apartment or a house off campus, and they returned home because their school was shut down, right? So their university was shut down, and they move home just for this short time, and they were living at home as of April 1st, they should still be counted at school. So they should still be counted in their apartment that they live on, or I'm sorry, that they live in the town or the city that they attend college, because you know, the only reason that they moved home for this short time was due to the pandemic that's going on. So they should still be counted in the town or city that they typically live at, because, you know, if the pandemic did not happen, they would be counted in their apartment in the town or city they live in, where they go to college at. And college students who live in dorms, you know, if they moved home for the time being, they are actually counted in the group quarters counting by the university if they live in dorms on campus. And then, you know, this is good guidance for anyone who has moved around due to the pandemic. So, you know, we want to kind of follow that guideline. I did speak with someone from the Bureau, and they said that they're trying to get some more guidelines written up for this, because it is, you know, it is kind of confusing to know where to count yourself or your children if they typically live somewhere else and they just moved home during this pandemic time. And then I also did want to add that if you have a PO box, you will not get a paper form mailed to you. So for those that have PO boxes, that is where the Census Bureau staff drop the questionnaire at your doorstep. But this operation has been suspended until late April, I would say, at least. So there are many folks that have yet to be invited to complete the census, but you are able to respond online to the census without being invited. So you do not have to use the ID that comes on your paper questionnaire to complete the census when you're completing it online or by phone. So looking at the 2020 census economics. So the census hires hundreds of thousands of people a cycle and will spend over 15 billion to complete the count. So this is I apologize, my dog is barking, so I'm going to let her out of my office really quickly. Okay, I am back. I apologize for that. That's the I guess the perks of working from home. She's she seems to always know when I am on a call or a webinar because she likes to say hello, I guess. So back to the 2020 census economics. So like I was saying before, this is the largest non-military ground operation that the US government engages in. So every person that is counted is worth about $2,000 in federal funding for your community. So that's just one person being counted is worth about $2,000 in federal funding for your community itself. So that's, that adds up. So that's why we want to get the most accurate count that we can. And then looking at so the average cost for counting a household has gone up dramatically due to a changing political climate, increase in immigration, and the rise of technology and a variety of other factors. So as you can see, in 1970, $16, and now in 2020, it's estimated around $107. So, what accounts for that $16 to $107 jump? So we have a very mobile population. And this slide is really important to go through all of these different factors here. So this slide shows why this year in particular there are various factors that will make it difficult to ensure a complete count. And because we've already demonstrated why the census is valuable to community action, this should be a big concern for community action. And this is why we need agencies to do what they can to make sure everyone is counted. So looking at the mobile population. So as we all know, the United States continues to be a very highly mobile nation. So about 14.3% of the population moves in a given year. And then looking at the fiscal environment. So budget deficits place significant pressure on funding available for the research, testing, design, and development work that's required for successful innovation. And then the rapidly changing use of technology, which this is huge. So, stakeholders expect the decennial census to use technology innovation. But the rapid pace of change in our environment, it makes it really challenging to plan for, and adequately test the use of the technologies. And then looking at information explosion. So the rapid changes in IT create stakeholder expectations for how the Census Bureau interacts with the public to collect data and then disseminate data products. And then the next one, distrust in government. This is really, really important. In community action, most of our customers and clients that we're serving, they have some level of distrust in the government. And, that's why as community action staff, as you all are trusted messengers at your agency, and you are able to talk to those, to your customers who trust you, who see you as a trusted messenger. It's really important to explain to them that the census is safe, the census is secure, and explain to them, the questions that are asked are much less invasive than some forms that they fill out for government assistance, right? So the questions that are being asked on the census are very simple, and their data is kept privately, and it is used for statistics, but their information is not shared. It's kept within the Census Bureau. And this distrust in the government is, this is a huge public concern. So um, a big concern about the information security and privacy. So how government programs use the information they collect is how they continue to grow. And then looking at the declining response rates. So response rates for Census Bureau surveys and for surveys and censuses in general have declined as citizens are overloaded with requests for information. And they become concerned about sharing their information. And then the next bubble there, increasingly diverse population. So the demographic and cultural makeup of the United States continues to increase in complexity. So this includes a growing number of households and individuals of limited English. And then that last bubble there, the informal and complex living arrangements. So households are becoming more diverse and dynamic, even just since the last census in 2010. So this can make it challenging to associate an identified person with a single location, right? So we're counting that person in one location, but this can make it really challenging to associate that person with one location. And then just an example here, so blended families, that blended families might include children who have two primary residences, right? So, and this, could even be, if you are a child and you have divorced parents, and let's just say you live with one of the parents for majority of the time, and you see the other parent, let's just say every other weekend or every Tuesday evening, you're going to be counted where you live and stay most of the time. Now the question has been asked, what if I'm a child and my parents have split custody, so I stay 3 days at my parent one, and then I stay 3 days at parent two, and I go back to parent one. And so it's, your time between each parent is split. Then you're going to count that child where they slept April 1st. So then looking at the hard to count population. So the people that are hard to count in our communities, right? The Census Bureau has identified these categories listed here. And I think there's around 17 categories of people who are traditionally undercounted in the census. And looking back at 2010, we missed 2 million children in the 2010 census. And we also missed people with low income, people with disabilities, senior citizens are often missed, and people of color. And these are the people that we serve every day in community action. So that is one reason why we are all involved and should be involved. So why community action? The hard to count populations that we have discussed and are the least likely to fill out the census happen to be the customers that we work with every day. So this is our community and these are our people. We are trusted messengers to these individuals. So, you know, these folks come into the Community Action Agency when they are at the lowest of their low, right? And they need the most help that they can receive. And you all are those trusted messengers to them, and you help them. So, you know, using your using your power to communicate with them, since they, you know, those customers trust you. You are who they interact with. You know, they see you as a trusted messenger. And so if you say to them, you know, I wasn't sure if you knew anything about the 2020 census that's happening right now or that's coming up, you know, but it's really important, and stress the importance to them. You know, we really need you to fill this out to better your community. They're more likely to listen to you because they trust you already, right? You know, and we want to make sure that the people that we serve get their fair share of federal dollars and representation in their community. So it's really important to stress to them why it's safe, why it's easy, and why it's important. So census data drives dollars. CSBG funding is census driven. LIHEAP, weatherization, and Head Start are also impacted. Healthcare centers, Section 8 housing, all of these programs are impacted. So if we do not have accurate counts, our community does not get the money that it needs. So it's very, very important to get that accurate count so that our community gets the funding that it needs. And I'll just read this little statistic here. In 2016, 15 federal programs, most used by community action agencies, relied on census data to distribute $77 billion, or 9% of $864 billion total federal program spending. And then looking at still within the Community Action Network. So community action staff and customers have the most to lose if your community does not get a complete count. And like we said before, community action agency staff frequently interact with people and families that make up the hard to count populations that we discussed. Kids age 0 to 5 and kids ages 5 to 9, senior citizens, people with disabilities, low income, you know, all of these programs that are implemented at the Community Action Agency is in part from census data. So we want to try our best to make mention of the census to every customer that you interact with. And I think I said this before, but you know, the census form is far less invasive than most forms you have to complete to apply for government assistance. And missing these hard to count populations means less federal funding for programs like education, childcare, Meals on Wheels, Section 8 housing, and WIC. So counting our Community Action Agency customers. So COVID-19 has impacted how we can reach the hard to count populations, but we can still make an impact by the ways of communication above, such as phone, text messaging, email, etc. We can talk to any customer or grantee you can to inform them of the census, right? So the COVID-19 impact has also changed how programs are operating. But any customer contact, we should include a mention of the census. So this is just a little example here, asking, have you had a chance to fill out the census yet? If you do, it means our community gets $2,000 in federal funding every year for 10 years for us to do work like this. And so, due to the COVID-19 stay-at-home order, where we are unable to communicate with individuals face-to-face, we are unable to hold events. We are unable to set up locations where we can provide questionnaire assistance. We can still communicate with these hard to count populations via phone, via text messaging systems, via email. We can send mailings out. We can post on our social media accounts. So, this is something that still can be done. And, even if you want to, even if you're going to send out some mailings, you could include a fact sheet in mailings or even in an email that talks about the census and why it's important to complete it. You can make mention of the census on your social media accounts to get the word out. The more likely that your customers hear it from folks like you, the more likely that they're going to complete the questionnaire. So overall, because of COVID-19, we're trying to avoid having the Bureau have to go knock on doors, right? So in the meantime, we really want people to self-respond. Self-respond by going online to my2020census.gov or calling the phone lines. So these options of self-response are going to reduce the number of people who will need Census Bureau employees to follow up at their doors. And now I do know that the phone lines have experienced really high call volume, plus some staffing issues due to the pandemic. I think that it's been reported that sometimes when someone has tried calling, there can be, between a 30 and 45-minute wait. But right now, they're working on trying to add a callback feature so that you can wait for a call back. And so we're hoping that this happens very soon. But I would say that the best way right now is to go online to complete your census. And then this little graph below here, this is actually the self-response rate for the state of Illinois. And so you can see that we are on an upward trend since March. And on this next slide, I will show you the national self-response rate and the Illinois self-response rate. And the 55.1%, that's actually as of April 18th. I was able to get on just before this webinar, and the data was updated as of April 19th. And so as of April 19th, Illinois self-response rate jumped to 55.4%. So a small jump just within one day. But as a state, as the state of Illinois, we are ranked 9th in the country right now at 55.4%. So that's really, really good. So we're ranked 9th as a state currently. There is one city in Illinois that is actually, they're ranked the 3rd city in the country at an 86.2% self-response rate. and that is Trout Valley, Illinois. So that's really awesome. In Trout Valley, they are really counting their people. And then as a country, we have hit the 50% response rate. So as you can see, the different colors make up the different percentage on this map, and you can look at this data daily. If you go to the census.gov website, you can look, or even if you were to Google, 2020 census self-response rate, the 2020 census.gov website would come up, and you would be able to, you can look at data by city, by county, by state. So yeah, it's I'm kind of addicted. I like to look every day. And the data is always a couple days behind. So like when I looked this morning, the most updated data was from April 19th, but feel free to get on and look how your community is doing. And then just another thing, and I think I maybe touched on this earlier, but if someone does not get an invitation in the mail, they can and should still fill out the form using a non-ID response. So they can still complete it without that ID. And they can be directed to the toll-free numbers that are provided, or to go online to complete it. So what can we do, right? So what can we do to help get out the count and make sure everyone gets counted? So we can learn about the census in your community. So maybe take some time to learn about who makes up the hard to count populations in your community, right? What are the major concerns? And then connect the census to important local issues. We can network, we can partner, connect, and build within our community. We can, connect with local organizations or groups that are involved in the census. We can recruit to fill census jobs to help the Bureau. We can do, census outreach at the agency level. So we can train our staff with knowledge about the census. We can provide information regarding the census at your agency. And I know that this, providing information at your agency right now is not an option, but that doesn't mean that you can't post on your social media, or like we said before, mailings, emailing, text messaging systems to really get that word out. Now, when we do go back to, when the stay-at-home order is lifted, having posters up or resources available at your agency. Maybe in the lobby you've got posters up and some pamphlets to educate those customers on the census. The goal is to make it easy to talk about while you do your other work. So making it easy enough to add in that layer about the census when communicating with your customers. So when talking to the hard to count populations, the right messaging is key. So, at all possible, we're hoping that your one service touch can be one of the 7 that each person gets from your agency about the census. So 1 out of those 7 touches. Marketing research shows that someone has to hear something 7 times to internalize it. So, a mailing sent out, a phone call, a poster in the lobby, a brochure in the lobby, and many more ways of touches is going to help reinforce this, right? So incorporating the census into existing contact with your clients. And then really focusing on empowering staff. You all are trusted messengers. And then just some good practices. So creating the invitation, allaying those fears. So explaining to those customers that it is safe, your data is private, and building their trust in the government, being trauma informed. So having, your staff be informed on trauma, and then using some of those motivational interviewing techniques. And this is all going to look different from community to community, but this is, these are some really good practices, to keep in your pocket. And then within your message, we want to focus on 3 priorities. We want to educate, we want to encourage, and we want to engage. So those are the 3 priorities we really, really, really want to focus on. Educating people, encouraging people and motivating them to respond to the 2020 census, and engaging organizations to encourage hard to count groups. And then within community outreach and marketing, so like we said before, using your social media as a platform to communicate about the census, creating materials to use in your outreach, hosted events to spread the word about the census after COVID-19, hopefully, and then making your materials audience specific. So whether it's community organizations, whether it's churches, schools, materials specific to young children. The census has done a fantastic job. If you go to the 2020census.gov website, they have made a lot of materials specific to different audiences. And there have been some really cute coloring books created for young children to learn about the census. And I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, I think it is. I think it's Sesame Street that did a census song and some other census materials. So all really great materials to share with the community. And then some barriers preventing people from completing the census. So a lot of folks are concerned about the confidentiality of the answers to the census. They're concerned that their answers to the questionnaire would be used against them. They have distrust in the government. Many do not feel that it matters whether or not they're personally counted in the 2020 census, and especially young people. So, across all demographic characteristics, more people predicted that answering the census could bring benefits to their community than to them personally. And this could simply be that lack of knowledge on the census. And then just some special circumstances here. I won't read through these word by word, but the first bullet point talks a little bit about people who are moving on April 1st. They should just count themselves once. So if they move into their new home on April 1st, they should count themselves at that residence. If they move out of their old home on April 1st, but have not yet moved into their new home, they should still count themselves at their old home. And then college students who are living at home should be counted at their home address. So that's if, say a child lives at home, they go to a local university or a local community college where their family lives, where they're from, then they would be counted at home. And then college students who live away from home should be counted at their on or off campus residence, where they live and sleep most of the time on April 1st. And then individuals who are living in shelters, they should be counted at the shelter. And then people who are living in a correctional residential facility, a detention center, a prison, a jail, they will be counted at the facility. So the shelters and that last bullet point for those, correctional residential facilities, detention centers, those are all counted under the group quarters counting. So that is where the Census Bureau contacts the head of the facility, and they set up a way to count everyone living in that facility on April 1st. So we've touched on the 2020 census itself, more of the general things. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the census grant in Illinois. So $29 million of general revenue funds were designated for census outreach, education, and mobilization within the state of Illinois. So IDHS administered a statewide NOFO to issue grants to community providers and local governments to encourage full participation in the 2020 census. So these efforts by IDHS focus on populations and geographies deemed hard to count. So hard to count areas are defined as a geography where the self-response rate in the 2010 decennial census was 73% or less, and there are also populations that have been historically undercounted, like we talked about earlier, young children, low-income households, and people with disabilities, just to name a few. So if we look at this map, this is how IDHS split up the state of Illinois into regions. So they split it up into 12 regions for the census grant. And there are 31 different regional intermediaries. So within each region, there are multiple regional intermediaries, and we'll get into that a little bit more within the next couple slides. So the Census Office in Illinois, they are supporting statewide coordinated outreach efforts through the regional intermediaries to ensure that identified geographic areas and populations who are least likely to respond will participate in the 2020 census. And so ICA is involved as a regional intermediary or as an RI. ICA applied for this grant on behalf of the member agencies because you all are trusted messengers, and everyone, as a community action network, we work closely with these hard to count populations that we've talked about in today's presentation. And so ICA applied on behalf of the member agencies. And so ICA was selected as a regional intermediary in 6 different regions of Illinois. So we are acting as an RI in 6 different regions of the state. And then on the next few slides, I'm going to touch briefly on what the role as a regional intermediary looks like, and then what the role of a subrecipient looks like. So the regional intermediary role. So we were to implement a plan for the region, which includes collaboration and coordination of subrecipients, education, outreach and communication, direct engagement, questionnaire assistance and participation, and then data collection and reporting. So the region plan is a collaborative effort and utilizes the plans and inputs of subrecipients. So subrecipients are many of our subrecipients are community action agencies, and then a few others are local nonprofits or government entities. So ICA's role as an RI, we collect monthly performance data based on requirements of the Illinois Census Office. We receive and disperse funds to the subrecipients, and we collect monthly fiscal reports to reimburse subrecipients of costs. We also ensure that subs are following the GATA rules for reporting, coordinate marketing and social media efforts, conduct calls and or meetings with subrecipients regularly or as needed, ensure that subrecipients have training and technical assistance that they need to be effective, monitor subrecipients, train subrecipients on Map the Count reporting platform, which this is a platform where our subrecipients collect all of their activity data, and then attend subrecipient census events and or meetings. And then what does the subrecipient role look like? So the subrecipients are the ones that are doing the boots on the ground work. So they are ensuring that their staff and volunteers involved in the program complete required training. They're providing a work plan to the RI, so to ICA, that outlines what type of activities they will do to reach these hard to count populations, total number of expected people to reach, a timeline, and then their digital and traditional media efforts, what those types of outreach will look like. They'll conduct education and outreach as outlined in the work plan. They conduct direct engagement activities or events that will attract hard to count populations, follow directives from the Illinois Census Office, provide spaces to facilitate online completion of census questionnaire, facilitate Illinois residents with completing the questionnaire. So this might be by providing internet access, laptops or tablets, engage, train, and utilize trusted messengers in the community, and sources to encourage members of the public to participate in the census, and then provide data regarding outreach and activities within Map the Count data platform. So our work, so ICA is an RI in 6 different regions, and then we have subrecipients within each region that are focusing on different counties. So just wanted to outline this for you all. So in the central region, this is one of the regions that ICA is a regional intermediary. So in the central region, ICA was awarded hard to count funding in Greene and Morgan counties. So our subrecipients that are in the central region are Faith Coalition for the Common Good and Illinois Valley Economic Development Corporation. And then looking at the Collar region, we were awarded hard to count funding in Will County. And our subrecipient in Will County is Will County Center for Community Concerns. And then we were also awarded base funding in Grundy and Kendall counties. And so in those 2 counties, base funding was, it was a set amount of funding. So it was $25,000 of base funding. And that base level funding was to be offered to the local county government. And then if they wish to not participate in the census count, then we would be able to offer that to a local nonprofit. So in Kendall and Grundy, we're working with both Kendall County and Grundy County. And then in the North Central region, we received hard to count funding in Peoria County. And our subrecipients in Peoria County are PCCEO, so Peoria Citizens Committee for Economic Opportunity, and the Illinois Migrant Council. And I do want to also mention that each subrecipient is focusing on different hard to count populations. So for example, Illinois Migrant Council, they're focusing their efforts on the migrant worker population. And then the last three regions, so the Southeast Central region, ICA received hard to count funding in Marion County, and our subrecipient working in Marion County is BCMW Community Services. In the Southwest Central region, ICA received hard to count funding in Bond and Madison counties, and our subrecipients within this region are BCMW Community Services, Madison County Community Development, Illinois Migrant Council, and Quad City Community Development Youth Center. And then the last region is the suburban region, which is suburban Cook County, and we received hard to count funding. In the suburban Cook region, since it's such a large region, regional intermediaries were actually assigned specific populations to reach. And so in this region, we were assigned racial and ethnic minorities, renters, and people living close to or below the poverty line. And so our subrecipients working to reach these specific hard to count populations are CEDA, Community and Economic Development Association of Cook County, and Housing Action Illinois. And I do want to say all of these subrecipients that I have listed here have been doing amazing work. They have had to shift their work plans due to this pandemic that really, they really had to shift their work plans. March and April were supposed to be months where in-person events were taking place weekly or daily. And so this really was a struggle when the COVID-19 occurred, because our subrecipients could no longer have events. They couldn't go door to door. They couldn't do community canvassing. So they have all done a tremendous job in shifting their work plans, and being willing to shift their work plans, because it's a lot of work. And they are doing the boots on the ground, and they are making sure that their communities get counted. And I just, I can't stress enough how great of a job they're all doing. Through this grant, we've encouraged our subrecipients to send pictures of, events they've had, to send, flyers they've created, social media postings they've made. And I wanted to share those with you all at the end of this webinar. And I'm working on a way to incorporate all of the photos of everything to put into a slideshow with some music behind it. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to share that maybe in another census webinar moving forward, because I wish that you all could see the picture, the photos of all the really creative events they've had, and then all of their creative, outreach ideas through phone call, through text messaging systems, through social media. They've done some really, really awesome work. And so, yeah, just want to give a round of applause to all of them. It's been really cool to see all of the work that they're doing in their communities. And then this next slide is just a resources page, some different websites where you can find some good information about the census. So the Community Action Partnership site, the United States Census Bureau, the United States Census 2020 website, and then the Map the Count. This is the Urban Data Visualization Lab. So this was created by University of Illinois at Chicago. They actually partnered with Illinois Department of Human Services for this grant. And so they created this Map the Count platform. And this is where all of our subrecipients record their activity data. And it has a really cool map feature on it. So even if you aren't a subrecipient, so you don't have a login to input data, you can still visit this mapaccount.uic.edu/maps and look at the map. And you're able to kind of dissect the map and do different layers of things you want to see. So yeah, that is available to everyone. And then that is all I have for today. I just want to say thank you to all that have attended. I don't think I see any questions. Let me just make sure. Okay. I don't see any questions that came through. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them in now, or feel free to reach out to myself if you have any questions regarding the census in Illinois. My email is cwiltsey@icanet.org. And like I said earlier, this webinar will be recorded and shared with the Community Action Network. And then I believe that is all I have. So thank you all for taking time out of your morning to listen in on what the 2020 census is all about. And I just want to stress again that a complete and accurate count is really critical for you and your community. So I hope that you have some good takeaways from today. And as always, if you have any questions, please contact me. Thank you all, and I hope that everyone is staying healthy.